welcome back. It's so fun to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back on with you. And yeah, I'm excited to go over these results with you. And this is going to be an interesting conversation because there's a lot of different things that we can work on here for people to see. And obviously, you're very, just knowing you do a lot of things and you're very healthy and very knowledgeable. So if there's things that Angela can do, then there's a lot of things that anyone here listening can do as well. So yeah, let's jump into it. I'm excited.
Yeah, let's jump in. So I guess what I'll do, because we're always getting new listeners to the show, so some people may not be familiar with my story. And we were talking a little bit back offline before we got started about the kind of things that I've been through over the last few years that I think are showing interestingly in the presentation, right? Who would have, well, you would have thought, but maybe not everyone listening would think you could get so much information from hair mineral testing. But one of the things, first of all, is obviously I went through kind of a health battle some years ago, back in 2014, after having had successive bouts of what started as postnatal depression, and then later got diagnosed as major depressive disorder. And things got pretty bad, where I had really felt that I'd sort of created this prison in my own mind. And I was really kind of thinking thoughts of suicide and just stuck in this mental place where I didn't want to leave my husband and kids without a mother and a wife, but I didn't know a way out and I didn't know how to turn the thoughts off in my head. And it was kind of like the universe was listening, because I then ended up hospitalized with double pneumonia and fighting for my life. And on the back of that, it sparked a health journey in me. Fortunately, I found peace in that moment. And I've since then made it my life's mission to get myself well and inspire other people to do the same. But what's interesting here is that we see some of this overhang, I think, on my mineral testing.
Yes. So with pneumonia, your immune system was really low. Your body wasn't getting nutrients. And certainly one of the main lenses that people miss there, and one of the main lenses that exist, is that it's nutrient depletion, and it's a lack of accepting nutrients from the body that you're taking. So we do talk to people often that have been taking high doses of vitamin D, for example, for a long time without magnesium, without boron, without K2, without B6. And what you see is, or they just have a magnesium deficiency from stress and giving birth and a job and being born with deficiencies, all sorts of things. And the fact that calcium is very readily available. So one thing that we see here that matches up, when we look at your hair analysis, is that, a really, really high level of calcium, and that's causing interference with absorbing, through the different cellular functions that need to happen in the body, that calcium is actually preventing. And this is, it matches and mirrors, the book I'm writing right now is about how nutrition becomes personality. And the thing that's really fascinating about this is that it absolutely mirrors what you were experiencing, what you just talked about, with withdrawing from, things that you didn't absolutely have to do, so you could feel more safe and comfortable. And yeah, so iodine is going to be a big part of that conversation, magnesium, and just, cutting out sources of calcium and things that cause calcium to be high, like vitamin D supplementation. So yeah, at least for the next while. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and when you speak of that, we were talking about this calcium shell. Can you explain a little bit more? This is a protective mechanism, is it?
Right. So the calcium shell pattern, as it's called, is a high calcium to magnesium ratio. And that's something that you'd only ever see in hair. And, or you'd see, 10 or more years earlier in hair than you'd ever see it in blood, if you ever saw it in blood. Because the body, just for people that are really, hearing this for the first time, or it's been a while since they heard our first episode, the thing to understand is that blood is you on your best behavior. So just to touch on that real quick, like, why are we talking about hair? Why hair? Well, hair is the best way to look at minerals in the body, period. With someone that truly understands how to interpret a hair analysis that's done well. So that's important to understand. It's very important because the body ultimately pulls from, for example, bone marrow to put into the blood vessels to transport throughout the body. And then we go in and we test the blood, and we're really surprised when we see everything is quote unquote normal. But we shouldn't be surprised, because the body is doing its best to, in the short term, solve the problem to keep our organs online. Because if our blood pH changes even a little bit, our organs start going offline, and then death is quick after that. So we really need to be testing hair. Hair is tissue, just like skin is tissue, just like organs are tissue. So it's the best representation we have without doing a biopsy of your actual, like, heart or, anything like that. So that's the why behind this. And there's more to it. And Angela and I cover a lot of that in the earlier episode. So going back to the shell pattern, the calcium aspect of this. So the calcium shell pattern is, it's evidenced by a high calcium to magnesium ratio. And what that means, that can look like going quote unquote too hard. So, the phrase hard water, right?
Mm-hmm.
So too much hard water has a lot of calcium in it. It has other things, but it's mainly calcium. It's making the water hard. And it's a buffering mineral, and it can shield us from emotions, which can be helpful for a little while. And then at some point, and magnesium helps us sensitize ourselves to surroundings and stimulates action. So magnesium, I've always, I've understood for a long time that we all have some degree of knowing. You could call it psychic ability. You could call it, you just know who it is before someone calls, they're going to call, then they call, and you know who it is. Whatever it is, that gets more and more evidenced actually as you get healthier and healthier in this balancing, which has been a tremendous surprise for me again and again. And one thing that blocks us off, the opposite of that, is the shielding when we're taking in too much calcium. So that shielding is, it's exactly like textbook what you said, really, when you described how you're feeling when you had double pneumonia. And it's definitely reversible, and that's the good news. So how do we break that down? Well, I'm happy to answer any other questions that you want to go into around this, but how do we break it down? Well, iodine is something that's missing in almost every diet outside of Japan, specifically because they eat a lot of sea vegetables. So Japan, just so you know, compared to the recommended daily allowance, which is a joke in the US, at least, Japan eats about 100 times that every day, 80 to 100 times. And they have the longest longevity, not only for that reason, but certainly they're not harming themselves for it. So, that you might think, oh, that's a lot of iodine. How do I get that iodine? That is one of the supplements that I like most. It always travels with me because it protects the thyroid from radiation as well. It does a number of different things in the body. It's antiviral as well for people concerned about that. You actually put it in a petri dish and it stops the viral growth, bacterial growth. It's antifungal as well. It's incredible. And most iodines taste horrible. So we figured that out. And I think the other thing to mention, I'll pause there. I know that's a lot.
I actually want to touch on iodine because I think, you mentioned their thyroid function, but I think it also affects, doesn't it, breast tissue as well, and development of kind of potentially like cysts on the breast and things like that. It can do.
Yeah. I really think that's anytime we look at formation, in the body that shouldn't be there, formations, hardening, again, hardenings, nodules. Calcium seems to be a culprit in all of those, potentially in ways that we don't fully understand, but certainly we just know that, hey, you have high calcium, you're most likely, there's going to be some downstream effect, either maybe directly, maybe indirectly, but there's a hardening. For example, one thing I've been able to understand lately is how to basically, like, I'll do body work on someone and massage, and I can just tell when I say, even like hug someone, how hard their shoulder is. That's calcium. I mean, it can be, yeah, it's dehydration often too, but there should be a pliability to the muscles in the body, and you should, there should be a suppleness, and calcium takes that out, and it sort of blunts our senses, really, right? Magnesium is a sensing element. It inspires that. So calcium kind of closes us off. So that's something else I would add in this sort of breast tissue conversation as well.
That's very interesting, because over that period where I'd been through kind of quite a lot of stress, and we were saying as well, obviously this kind of culminated in my father passing away last year, and it's very traumatic seeing my mum as well, my own grief, but my mum go through certain things. And then I would find I'd go to my sports massage therapist, and my back would be like concrete, would be the way I would describe it.
Like concrete. Wow, I've never heard anyone say that. That is true, though. Yeah, I went home for the holidays, and one of my older sisters, who is having some health challenges, I give her a hug, and I sort of like, one thing I've developed in the last few months that's really strange is talking about, abilities, is I can touch someone, even not even have to touch, which has been surprising, but certainly when I touch someone, I find where they're holding the most tension. And often it is in the shoulder. And like sometimes it's hip, sometimes it's shoulder, but there's usually this grid pattern that connects a bunch of different things that somehow I understand intuitively without really having the knowledge of the muscle structure. But regardless of that, the more, the less the body communicates easily. When you have concrete, there's poor communication, right, between cells and between the rest of the body. Energy does not flow easily at that point. So I noticed, I was like, hey, and then sure enough, we look at her hair test, and she's just like very, very high in calcium. And there's a sort of rigidity, there's a protecting, and there's she wants answers. And I think, as you're listening to this, you're probably going like, you either know someone like this, where like they have the best intentions, and they may even ask questions, and then they get the answer, and they're like, well, I don't know about that, basically, which is like them being hesitant to resist to try something that has a lot of validity to it and has helped a lot of people. So that's kind of where she is. And I think it's just important to understand that all of this is an interrelationship between emotion and nutrition.
It's interesting. I mean, one thing that kind of reassured me, because I've been doing this, I'm working on my longevity very much this year and reversing my biological age. So this is part of a whole load of testing. And one of the
huge
tests that,
this is like the most important thing, frankly.
It's so important.
You have to get calcium out. Yeah, for sure. But anyway, go ahead.
Well, so one of the things that I did was to go for a DEXA scan. And that was interesting because that gave me a degree of reassurance. I was looking at it from a body composition point of view, but obviously it's not a full bone density scan, but it gives you an idea. And actually my bone density looked really robust. So then I was kind of, but that made me think I'm not kind of taking away from the bone. But I know also, and I'm curious as to your point of view here, but I also live in the Surrey Hills, which is like, we have Chalk Hills Bakery, right? It's known to have a really hard water. It's a very hard water area, which I think is also having an impact. But I'm just kind of curious as to your views on those things. And from a nutritional standpoint, like how much should I then, you mentioned avoiding calcium.
Yeah,
And for someone else who has, I've
absolutely.
seen it with other clients of mine that has this presentation, like,
Mhm.
do I need to stop the Greek yogurt? No.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Everything that you can do in the next 90 days, probably more like 180 days. So we'll retest in, 60 to 90 days. Be, yeah, I mean, what we always say I know Angela knows this, but as you're listening to this, the general rule of thumb for us is that we offer subscription options for every 60 or 90 days. 60 is more for like the triathlete or someone that, is hyper focused on reversing their age biologically, which is something that can definitely happen, that I've noticed myself too, as well. I can talk about my own hormone numbers going up, like doubling in the last decade, in a good way. And testosterone, for example, from about 500 to 1,000. So really, really good from 25 to 35. And these are the building blocks of hormones, and therefore it makes a huge difference. And so calcium is interfering with a lot of different things in the body. And vitamin D is a steroid. We don't think of it that way, but it is. And it should be taken with precaution. And it's like the only advice at least America got during the past couple of years was take vitamin D. And it's interesting because when you take vitamin D, these are a couple tangents that will merge back together, I promise. So when you take vitamin D by itself and you have a a magnesium deficiency, it causes calcium to raise always. But it can actually hold a calcium channel open in the brain and cause cell death in the brain. And I just wonder, I'm like, I know in Britain, they were looking at, and maybe did pass, they were talking about it, trying to, I think they did, adding more fluoride to the water or fluoride to the water for the first time, something like that. And it's like, wow, we've known that was a mistake for years and years. It's like literally just dulling the senses, making people quite literally less intelligent and more docile. So anyway, protect yourselves. The water should be filtered. I like reverse osmosis and hydrogen systems that follow RO. That's the kind of like top tier after, otherwise just like spring water that is then put through a hydrogen machine, which is a whole different level. But we have to structure our water, and we have to get the junk out of it, because whether it's birth control that is ending up in your water supply or literally just like hardcore drugs, whether prescription or otherwise, that ends up in the water, and we should be filtering our shower and every point of use, as well as if you own your home, whole house filtration too. It's just kind of a no-brainer to strip out a lot of that. Because the hard water, like you mentioned, is so important. So for certainly the next 90 days, or until your next test, if it's sooner than that, we want to absolutely take out all calcium from the body, and you'll notice a lot more energy, probably starting within about 10 days or so, maybe even sooner. And then, progressing, and then you'll go, wow, like, oof, like I feel sort of like a different person in a month, in a good way, just more ease, more flow. Yeah.
That's cool. I like that. I have a few questions there. The first one would be, what about like green vegetables that increase calcium? Does that mean I've got to remove a lot of those, or is it more
Yeah.
concentrated foods?
For
That's one that
now, everything with calcium, for sure. It's
calcium.
just in this particular case, the calcium level that you have is so elevated. I mean, so that may not be the recommendation for every person. This is why, we're all unique, and each time we take the test, we're unique. So we need different things to support us. But certainly, I mean, we're looking at 5 times the upper end of the scale. So a little more than that, actually. So that's those are some thoughts. Also, for background, for people that didn't hear the first one, So I suppose, why should you listen to me on this? I'm Barton Scott. I'm a biochemist, and I'm also a nutritionist. I studied chemical engineering, and I became a nutritionist. I had been studying nutrition since I was literally like 10 years old, and wrestling and needing to understand more about nutrition. Became a real nerd in that area, and devoted biohacker. And then I had memory issues in college, and I was born to older parents, and I watched everyone fail. My family was really close. I watched everyone fail my mother, and her get more and more ill, go from like very vital to not, and then gone via aneurysm. So this would have been really helpful. What I learned along the way was that the minerals we were taking were not absorbing. They were not moving our hair test results. So we're just finding the hair analysis and finding someone that really understood it, which is the second part of that that's very important, is crucial, because a lot of people will just sort of read, oh, you're low in this, take that. And it's not that simple. I wish it was, it's not. And then the other part was, I wish the supplements worked, but they didn't. And we tried a bunch of different brands. And what I ultimately found was, well, what I went to school for, it just so happened, was exactly what was needed to do this, which is taking an industrial process and improving it. So you might be thinking a mental shortcut right now, oh, he's talking about quality. I am not talking about quality. Quality should be a given. What I'm talking about is effectiveness. And so what all of our products do is they allow you to absorb the minerals at a cellular level without digestion, without needing your digestive system to work. So yeah, that is the difference. So we create a plasma out of all of our minerals. So they're just like when you get magnesium, for example, from food, or selenium from food, or any other mineral like iodine, like we're talking about. Your body just absorbs it. And it does it ask for multiple forms, like 8 forms of magnesium? No, it doesn't. That's more of a man-made construct, and that is only applicable if the particle size is huge, like it is in those other products. So that's why we do it and how we do it, and hopefully that gives some context and background. So
these are nano minerals, basically, aren't they? They're small enough.
Yeah. So this category that I created in 2016 is called stabilized nanominerals. So really small nanoparticle technology allow for that what I said, which is having your minerals not need to be digested by the body. Because, well, why is that important? Well, most of you listening to this do not have enough stomach acid to break down everything it is that you eat. And your body struggles with that, and you have bloating and all sorts of issues. And you just don't get the proper nutrition from your food, not to mention the soil is depleted, and we don't get enough anyway. You know, our food has roughly half of what it had 80 years ago. So yeah, just in summary, the soil's really depleted. The minerals you're taking are way too big to be absorbed without digestion. So they have to go through a digestive process, and they're relying on your gut, which is almost certainly, if you're like 99% of people out there, you have gut dysfunction, and that's causing low stomach acid, that's causing poor absorption issues.
Interesting. One other thing that I wanted to just add into the mix here was, I recently did a blood panel, and actually my vitamin D looked a little bit low. So the advice there was to increase vitamin D. I've not had that before, because usually actually my vitamin D is really robust, but it's interesting that you were saying not to take vitamin D. I think people listening are really interested in that. Can you sort of marry up the blood work with the hair?
Sure. So the thing there is, because your calcium is so high, it takes precedent over this, because your vitamin D is only a little bit low. You can go and get vitamin D from the sun, which I know is difficult where you live, but finding some other way besides supplementing it. And when you do have any vitamin D at all, supplementation wise, you need to take it with magnesium, B6, K2, and boron. So yeah, and we can offer all of those except the B6 right now. Soon we'll have that in one of our blends, which is a cramp supporting blend, which a lot of people, this is interesting, I think, for a lot of people, if I polled the audience and said, so cramps are caused by a deficiency of what? I think you'd probably say potassium, and it's actually magnesium. Potassium can play a small role, but it's magnesium because magnesium lets the muscles relax. So yeah, that's just another thought. But yeah, truly getting that balance, right? Because it's like a seesaw, and right now there's so much force on one end of it due to that high level we're talking about.
Can you just explain that for people listening, Barton? You mentioned a few other like vitamins, minerals.
Yeah.
Is this applicable for me, or generally when people, because a lot of people are taking
Yeah.
vitamin D, we've got so much
Yeah.
publicity
Oh,
with COVID.
sure.
Do they
Yeah.
need to take B6? Do they
Yeah.
need to think about magnesium?
Yes. So B6 helps the utilization of magnesium. Boron activates vitamin D. It also reduces sex binding globulin, and is synonymous with intelligence. So you want that. K2, I think a lot of people listening to the show are pretty savvy and certainly smart, and understand that, at this point, K2 is a necessary cofactor. So yeah, that's for everyone all the time. Really for the rest of your life is that's the protocol. It's what I do every morning if I'm supplementing vitamin D, which my main goal is to get it from the sun. And not everyone has the genetics where they absorb vitamin D from supplements anyway, unfortunately. So there's, I totally acknowledge the difficulty there, and the just millions of times you've heard, like, this is the one time you're hearing, okay, potentially don't take vitamin D. And I'm saying in Angela's case, definitely don't. And I know that it's hard to go against all these things. So yeah. Can you hear me okay?
I think that's really interesting for people, because I don't think a lot of people will be thinking about other minerals and vitamins that they need to take alongside and how that's affecting them. One thing I want to pick up on here as well is the magnesium that we see here, because this is another interesting piece, is that I found that when I'm not taking magnesium, I experience sort of rapid jumping in my heart rhythm, which is quite interesting.
Yeah. When you're not taking magnesium, magnesium and potassium both influence that. So yeah, that's important to understand. I mean, the heart, is a really special muscle. I suppose it's a lot more than that too, but it is easy to think about it as a muscle which needs potassium to contract, magnesium to relax.
Yeah, and obviously my potassium is low. When we look at this calcium issue and the calcium shell, I guess the question that comes is it the emotionality that's created this situation, or is it the calcium that's contributing to the emotions?
Yeah, it's okay. I think it's a teardrop where they both meet in the middle, really. Yeah, it really is. Like, now here's, I would say it's primarily nutrition becoming personality. But how you soothe yourself when you have these emotional incidents is with you go for the Greek yogurt, which is probably a comfort food for you. You go for things like that. You see what I mean? So
that's interesting.
Yeah. So I hope we clip this, because I want people to hear that, because that's a great question. I love that question. And so on the nutrition side, how nutrition becomes personality, right? Is like the hallmark thing that I like to focus on. And when, yeah, it's just when your calcium level is getting up higher and higher, like you really do start to close off emotionally too. So it's definitely both.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And I guess could there be an element as well, because I'm such a go person, right? So I'm always
Yeah.
achieving. Like, am I sort of subconsciously deliberately slowing myself down
Yes.
to
Yeah.
rest?
Yeah. So it's a hardness thought of as going hard in life, and, pushing through and sort of not feeling emotions and being, stubborn as we can all be to get through things. And I mean, I totally get it too. I see, just knowing you, right? You're brilliant. And I mean, you were in law for quite a while, right? Yeah. And that makes so much sense, right? So to speak really frankly, masculine and feminine is also very much something that is evidenced in this test, right? Zinc to copper ratios is a balance of hormones. So for anyone that's looking to optimize, if you're looking to optimize your hormones, this is also really, really important. I mean, vitamin D is obviously a hormone too. So it's that you've heard plenty at this point about that, and probably like, can you pick another topic? But this is such an important thing that most people don't understand. And as you're listening to this, you're probably also, to some extent, like I would say 70% of people have some level of this. May not be as severe, but maybe more severe actually. So who knows? But there's a hardness there. And when, as a woman going into your masculine in a very structured, rigid field like law, I mean, that's a masculine field. Like feminine, the way I've come to think of it through a nutrition lens for sure, is creativity and the element copper. And copper, why is that? Copper manages estrogen. So you have a lot of estrogen if you have a lot of copper that's bioavailable in the body. And you have, and the opposite's true. And then with zinc, you have a lot more analyticalness and testosterone and progesterone are governed by zinc, modulated by zinc. So that ratio is very, very important. And I would say that ratio is responsible for a lot of relationships working or not working, or working for a time, and then that ratio changes and the personality changes, because hormones become personality. They become habit, become how you show up and how you see yourself, how other people see you. So yeah,
So
it's
what we see
it's a juicy
here,
topic for sure.
it is, it's really interesting. So looking at my zinc to copper, it's not sort of highlighted as being really off here. What would you say about it? And by the way, we're going to put the results below, so anyone listening to this can actually have a really good look at them.
Sure. Yeah, let me take a look. So your zinc to copper should be great. Oh, nope, that's zinc to mercury. Let's see, zinc to copper, 11. Yeah, you're pretty normal range there. I wouldn't think that you would have any issue there. I would think, if anything, you would be higher. My guess, without even looking at this, would be that you would skew higher. So you'd be more like progesterone, testosterone dominant, which for a lot of people, which is not uncommon, and nothing wrong with that. I would say probably the easiest way for particularly women to get real career things done and make progress is having that ratio higher, certainly, than lower, because lower is ungrounded creativity. And zinc is just a great mineral organizer, so you want that, and you do skew to the higher end. Analytical, you're very analytical in a good way, so that makes sense. So yeah, it makes sense that you're at the higher end of that range for sure. It's
quite interesting as well what you say there, because I remember I interviewed Dr. Libby Weaver, and we were discussing, she sort of put something out there around that, do women with PCOS, which I have they often been raised by quite a masculine father figure whose expectations are quite high? And I was definitely raised in that environment. And then obviously in corporate law,
Yeah.
you were required to just carry on, right? And sacrifice sleep and do what it takes.
Yeah.
And I think there's an element, isn't there, of conditioning over the years. And definitely I'm more pro androgenic on that profiling when we look at hormone testing.
Yeah. Environment affects so much. Yeah, certainly. Expectation, so much. Yeah, I would actually have you supplementing zinc in this case for now, and copper. So just because you're on the lower end of both of those, so your overall level and ratio is good. It's just the ratio is good, and just both are a little bit low. So nothing too crazy, just like 2 doses of our zinc and 1 dose of our copper a day, because copper is also energy. I know you talked about energy. Copper is needed just like magnesium and oxygen to make ATP, or raw energy, in the cell.
Yeah, sure. And what about, I'm curious, because you're obviously writing a book around how nutrition becomes personality. It's fascinating. What else do you see in terms of some of these other things we can pick out in terms of these ratios that might be showing up that would interest people? Or maybe not, maybe mine actually look fine, but you want to highlight.
Yeah, sure. Great question. So something you're fine in, but something that we see is that if someone has high amounts of lead, they'll be angry. So you're fine there, and then, like we see there was a study done with hair analysis quite a while ago. And what they found was the rate of people going back to prison was correlated with high lead and high iron numbers. And that's really something to be concerned about. So yeah, those are something to think about there. So
that's very interesting.
Yeah, so that is truly in that case. For example, and this kind of speaks to your question earlier, if I can absolutely take someone and over time change their personality by changing their nutrition, like no question. In fact, so that's not a question. That is absolutely true. And politics aside, to whatever extent that we can, we see that there are people in the world that are telling us right now, as we speak, that suddenly, like, just a lot of untruths, like that meat is, suddenly there's like a lot of cows dying. There's 1,000 chickens that died in one fire. All sort, and then simultaneously, this thing that Bill Gates has been working on around this chickenless egg since like 2013 is being pushed into the market as an option, or they've suddenly had some breakthroughs, and there's just too many things for that to be an example. But why, right? Certainly what we know is for a fact is that just in general, nutrition becomes personality. And I see that so clearly, probably more clearly in almost anyone, because I've seen so many of these tests, and I've got to see how people come off of a bipolar spectrum because they have enough salt and potassium in their diet now. So that's another big one. You can guarantee that someone will have they will present like a bipolar person, or a person that would be labeled as such, just by having particularly low sodium. So, I know a lot of people use it. We actually own the phrase test, don't guess, because although we have these, our own unique manufacturing process for supplements that work really well, I believe so heavily in testing and having people have consultations with people that understand the test, because it's about taking the right action, not just using really, really good tools. That's
very interesting what you say there, because when I obviously I had 3 children in 4.5 years, right? So very close together. I couldn't try to have my first one naturally. It ended up in an emergency situation. So I ended up, because I had pelvic disproportion, 3 C-sections, 3 babies that had reflux. It was all kind of intense in those 4.5 years.
Three babies that had reflux.
3 reflux babies, yeah.
Wow. Okay. Yeah.
So they
wow.
didn't really sleep. So it was quite an intense period. And obviously I was going through my own recovery.
Sorry. So can I ask a question there? When you say
Sure.
reflux, I just want to make sure I'm on the same page. Do you mean like acid reflux like adults would have, or something
They
else?
would, so with infant reflux, sometimes
Is
it can
that
be
different?
silent, and they would get the burning. They would absolutely, because they would have pain, but sometimes for one of them, like, it was very productive.
So what's interesting, I want everyone to hear this. Just want to make sure we're on the same page. That is a magnesium deficiency. And the birth issues were most likely a magnesium deficiency, either because your body has to be able to relax. But reflux, oddly enough, is when that valve does not relax closed. So it's here in the esophagus or below, and it needs to relax closed. And it can't. So it actually stays open instead of relaxing. Yeah, it's really that simple.
And
I
that's
know that
something I struggle with,
hopefully,
interestingly.
exactly. And you have high
Yeah, I
calcium.
get
So
that.
what the
Yeah.
mother has, she gives to her child. What she doesn't, but exactly. So hopefully that's not like upsetting, but that's the truth. And I just want people to really understand that. So
yeah, that's very interesting, because that's something I struggle with. So, but the bit that sorry.
Yeah, this is a key fertility conversation for everyone, both men and women. Like right now, both men and women are seeing just for the first time ever, really, like a real challenge in getting pregnant, particularly on like it's being shown more and more that men are having fertility issues. And this whole approach is certainly a solution to that, no question, because minerals become the building blocks of your hormones, along with fats and amino acids. But truly, like your hormones will not be right if your minerals aren't right. They won't be optimal ever. Like it's chemically impossible. So for that reason, for last year, we haven't talked about this. I'll just say it briefly. I put out something called Upgraded T last week. And T is in testosterone, which is good for both men and women that need it. I have some really fit women friends in their 30s that have told me, since I've put this, I've been working on this, like, oh, I want to try it, actually take testosterone cream twice a day on my arm. And they're like 30 and like some of the fittest women I know. Shocked by that. I was like, wow, really? And it's just nutrient depletion. And that's the cause of the low hormone thing. It is almost nothing but that, because they eat a diet with plenty of fats in it. They have plenty of amino acids because they have protein from animals and plant, like just a whole array. They have a really balanced diet. So anyway, just for what that's worth, that product is pretty experiential and pretty special.
This is the new release of the
yeah.
tea.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. So yeah, it's very exciting. So the last thing I was going to say there, because hormones just come up so much and it's a big part of this, is that true or false, women have more testosterone than they have estrogen in their body.
True.
Yeah, they have more testosterone. Yes. And I've seen different numbers, but it seems to be at least 10 times more testosterone than estrogen, like a healthy woman. And there's a spectrum, it seems like, from about 10 times to about nearly 40, like 38 times, which is surprising. So it's just evidence that women need testosterone as well to feel their best, and that certainly men do as well. Now, the average man compared to the average woman will have about 10 times more, but they both need it. And the first hormone to go as women age is testosterone, and then progesterone later. So.
Yeah, I knew that around it, but it's great that you've released that. Have you got any more products that you're bringing in the pipeline? Obviously, you've got a book coming, which is exciting. I can't wait to read it.
Yeah, thank you. I think I missed that thing that you said.
Are there any other products that you have that are kind of coming to market soon?
Sure. Yeah. Upgraded Mood is going to be out by the time this airs. If this airs in a couple of weeks, we'll have it out in the next 2 weeks. So yeah, that's really exciting. I've worked on that product to get it really, perfect for, over a year and a half. So it's something I'm really psyched about, because what I found was just a lot of studies and research that lithium, which is an element just on the periodic table and something we test for in hair, is missing from a lot of people's diets. And when it's missing from the water supply, there's a lot of clear research to show that the highest rates of suicide and depression are evidenced or connected directly with low lithium levels. So this changes things really, really quickly for people.
Yeah,
so
that's
it
something
has,
sorry, go on.
it has that. It has our magnesium, which again, the form doesn't matter for that. Forget everything you've ever learned there. We're doing a clinical trial on upgraded magnesium to prove it's the most effective sleep supplement on the market, which from user data on the Oura Ring and Whoop, and we already know that's the case. So it's just a matter of proving it. And and then it'll just be, just another part of the journey after that. But just getting those products in people's hands, because it quells anxiety so effectively. My last long-term relationship was with a girl that I discovered, beautiful person inside and out, but she really suffered with anxiety. And when I was developing that product, she actually started taking, this is Upgraded Mood. She was taking it, and just like some of the early batches I was working on, and she actually got off of her anxiety medication. Now, this is not, advice or anything. This is just a story I'm sharing, but so consult with someone that's nutritionally informed, which probably is not a regular doctor, but consult with someone nutritionally informed. Your own mileage may vary, but understand that if you're on something like anxiety medication, it's because your nutrition's off, your health is off in some way that you can measure and then correct with everything we're talking about today. That's not me giving advice. That's just me telling you what we do. And it's really important to share that, because we do get people off of sleep medication and anxiety medication and thyroid medication by using our different products and testing. And that has happened. So I can share that. But yeah, she actually, we ended up breaking up, talking about nutrition becoming personality, because I think because she just ran out, and she had stopped taking it, and she didn't want to take it anymore, the medication, that is. And it was going to be several more weeks before I had another batch that we were testing of Upgraded Mood. And it's important. It's important because when you don't feel safe in your own skin, like it doesn't really matter what other things are going on in your life. Everything else has to be perfect for you to, feel even somewhat comfortable. So, that's just a word of warning for people, is that, just understand that these things can absolutely affect your relationships.
And with that, when you were talking what was in it, you mentioned lithium, magnesium,
chromium.
chromium. Okay.
Chromium for blood sugar.
And for creating stuff. I wanted to pick up on what you said earlier, because it was interesting to me when you were talking about the interplay. I think it was just going back was with sodium and potassium and bipolar, because when I was struggling with depression, obviously it moved on from postpartum depression into major depressive disorder. The concern of me coming off the medication was that I would trip into bipolar, because at that point what I was having were episodes. So I was kind of, and it was quite cruel actually, because from my own perspective, what would happen is I would have these incredible highs where I would feel like Superman. I could do anything, right? And my husband initially would be excited, right? Because it felt like I was well. And we learned over time that this always preceded an almighty crash. And I think that was the cruel part, because the bigger the high, the bigger the low. And so I learned over time to kind of expect these. Obviously, I then worked on my nutrition, I retrained, in nutritional therapy, left law, and that has, as you say, like I'm testament to the fact that nutrition changes these things dramatically.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's helpful for anyone maybe who's listening, who struggles with anxiety or who struggles with bipolar or mood disorders. If you can elaborate a little bit more, just what might have been going on there.
Yeah. So, all right. I feel like personal stories are sometimes the best thing to share. So, before she and I were together, there was actually my other long-term relationship before that was with someone that, and I got to see her hair test for the first time right before we broke up. So I remember this very vividly. Her sodium level was like a 1.3 sodium to potassium. It was so low. And granted, you know, I've seen that before in people. And I remember saying, hey, it's going to be, here's what I would say to anyone. It's going to be really hard for you to be, and I remember thinking like, how should I say this, you know? But she's like, yeah, you know, help. And I saw the erratic behavior in her, so it didn't really surprise me, but I knew the news might be surprising. I remember saying a short version of this, and a few days, so which was essentially, it's going to be really hard for you to be in relationship with anyone, even including yourself right now. Like, it's going to be hard for you to be good to yourself. It's going to be hard for you to, which you can probably relate to in those low periods where you're like, nothing, I'm not happy by anything. Like, nothing makes me happy. And then you start reaching and thinking for different vices, like more stimulants, more sedatives, so more booze, more coffee, you know, whatever it is, just to feel something and to feel in control.
But for me, there was a lot, it was coupled with a lot of self-loathing and self-blame, and just like completely discompassionate with myself.
Right.
Yeah, I thought I was like the worst mother. I convinced myself that my kids would be better off without me. And
wow.
It was really hard. Yeah.
And knowing you, like, there couldn't be anything further from the truth. But the veil of how our hormones are affecting us based on the nutrients we're not getting, and the strength or lack thereof of hormones, the balance of those hormones as a cascade, and the production of those hormones either as a steady rate or a very much cyclic sort of thing, which is what I believe happens, right? But the bipolar swings correlate with swings in nutrition. So they have no sodium, and then they don't produce the adrenal hormones. So they have no energy, lethargy, fatigue, everything you just talked about. And so you need magnesium, potassium, sodium. Wow, this has been a really interesting conversation.
It's been really interesting. So I'll tell you why, because there's something I've just like pieced together there that you're saying. So when I got to the hospital, if you imagine at this point, I've convinced myself that I've got this prison in my mind. I just want to turn the thoughts off. So I'm thinking suicide all the time. I don't want to do that to my kids. I don't want them to not have a mom. So I'm kind of trapped. And the crazy thing is, when I then got admitted into hospital, I had nowhere to run, right? You can't run away from yourself because you're only with yourself. I'm hooked up to oxygen, and I have a drip, and I have this profound sense of peace, almost enlightenment. But now I'm wondering, with what you're saying, whether the drip, because they're giving me minerals, right? It's changing.
Wow.
Oh my God.
They were giving you
sodium.
Oh my God. They were giving you sodium.
That never occurred to me before that was making a difference. Like, how did I suddenly had a moment of clarity, and I was like, I'm okay. Like, I've got to fight for my children. That is crazy, Barton. I had never connected that.
Wow, that's a saline drip. Yeah. Yep. And whatever else. But yeah. So
look at that impact on mental health.
Yeah.
That nobody had told me. You know, I'd got to the point when they initially, so I was on antidepressant medication. It wasn't working. They swapped the antidepressant medication. They increased the dose. Then I was put on antipsychotic medication, right, for bipolar and schizophrenia. They thought, oh, it'll be a tiny dose. It knocked me out. They 5x'd the dose before I could function. Like, it was scary. And my husband will tell you, I used to have to like literally take my medication and be within bed within 10 minutes, or I would almost just pass out. And
That's like way too much of a dose. Yeah, of course. Wow. Huh.
I had never connected the sodium.
Yeah. Wow.
That's so interesting.
Wow. I love that we
Yeah.
figured that out just now.
It's
That's
only
great.
like 9 years later, but
Yeah.
fortunately.
But the
Yeah.
ripple effects of this conversation for people, I hopefully I don't have to really say this, but if you got value out of this conversation, share it with someone you love.
Yeah, please
uh,
share it, because everybody knows someone, even if it's not affecting them, that has
it's
anxiety or mood
this has
problems.
affected everyone or will affect everyone in their life, I believe.
I believe
Some
that too.
like, yeah, yeah. I mean, I've had really low sodium before, and it was, from being in wrestling, sweating 6 to 8 pounds water weight in a practice or in a day, playing football as well, sweating, but really wrestling, cutting weight, sort of self-induced hypothyroidism. I've overcome a lot of things, hypothyroidism. I've always been fit somehow, but really low core body temp at times. It's funny, as I've continued to do this work, you just stay on the path. You keep doing the test every 90 days. You keep supplementing what you need, and that changes every 90 days because you're making shifts. It's a spiral upward. And yeah, that may sound like a sales pitch, but I hope that as you're listening to it, you understand, like, I just really believe this, and I've seen it get a lot of people well. So yeah, I kind of don't care how it sounds. And certainly, we're doing great as a company. So it's really just about education at this point for me. That's what's most fulfilling. So I really appreciate this conversation.
I appreciate
Yeah.
you coming and sharing it. I
Yeah.
really do. I'm just thinking, before we kind of close towards the end, I think there's a couple of things that I think people will be interested in. One
Mhm.
is, you mentioned metabolism. So for
Uh-huh.
me, I think it looked a bit on the slow side here by everything that's going on.
Yeah.
Can you explain
Yeah.
how hair mineral testing can help them understand that, and thyroid function as well?
Yeah, sure. So your thyroid function, calcium to potassium is very high. The upper end of the range is 40. It goes from 2 to 40. You're at 63. So then that's just simply due to calcium. So this is, again, why you'll have more energy when you cut calcium out of your diet. So enjoy knowing that and reminding yourself of that whenever you're thinking of Greek yogurt. Just swipe those two together, and because you mentioned that earlier. So yeah, really, you don't need calcium right now. So anything that you think is healthy, like greens currently, find some other way to get that.
I don't
Those
want to give up my
polyphenols.
broccoli.
Yeah, broccoli is very high in
Literally love
calcium.
broccoli. I eat
Yeah,
so much broccoli. It's unreal.
right. Well,
Yeah.
it's going to be a growth month for you. uh, the, the thing that people should know too is we're diet agnostic. We're not going to try to sell you on a diet. We're just going to tell you, hey, you got to eat more potassium foods, however you want to get it. Search foods high in potassium, eat your favorite ones. Yeah, so we're not dogmatic in any way. We're open there. So you do want to increase your zinc also because of your mercury level.
Yeah, that's what I was going to come
Nutrition,
on to last.
yeah, nutrition becoming personality. If someone's mercury level was really high, which yours isn't, but it's up there some, if it was really high, that is a craze or madness. And that was probably part of the problem with the low sodium too. So yeah, zinc supplementation is your friend there. Selenium as well. Iron is as well. Like just eating organ meats and foods high in iron is a good idea. Vitamin C is going to help that absorption. Whole food vitamin C, it's great. It's going to help the absorption of iron. And then, but at the same time, getting rid of, like, I recommend people give blood. every 3 months, almost regardless, because anemia is not really anemia. What we think of, there's also copper anemia, which you'd only understand if you're doing a hair test, not blood. And the really challenging thing, hopefully this is not too much for people to understand, but that you can get it if I say it simply, which is that if you show low iron in your blood, you're almost certainly high iron in your tissues, which is your body protecting itself from high iron in the blood, which can be very, very damaging to arterial walls, endothelial function, all sorts of things. So I know a lot of people are like, oh, well, if she's menstruating, then it's a good chance she has low iron. Not true. You have an iron recycling system in your body. You only need a couple milligrams of iron a day to be sufficient. Like right now, you're sufficient, but it's just, compared to your mercury level, iron will help push that out. So will zinc and selenium. So that's why we're looking at that and saying that. So that's probably a
What about people
lot.
who see high iron in their blood?
Then they definitely have high iron and they should be giving blood.
Yeah.
They should be
That's
giving
my
blood.
husband.
Yeah, for sure. And most men certainly should be giving, as a broad spectrum, men should give blood every, almost as often as you can. And you feel good after it. You feel lighter and less angry easily. So yeah, like we talked about with the prisoners.
And with the mercury, would you say that mine is at a level it's just over acceptable where I should avoid big fish like tuna, for example?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah. No, for the next year at least. Okay. But just in general, tuna is just not, they just live so long, they collect a lot. So small fish, mackerel, sardines, anchovies. Yeah.
And what about the barium there? What do you think's happening there?
Barium may just be actually hair products or makeup or things like that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Getting your phosphorus up through meats and organ meats. It's on the low end there. That will help with metabolism as well.
Okay.
So, yep. So yeah.
From a toxicity perspective, I thought I came off quite lightly.
I think so, but as we get healthier, we peel layers of the onion.
Okay.
So yeah.
That could look different in 90 days.
Because they can be stored deep in the tissues and their body's not, yeah. So we'll continue to look at that part. The main part is, what are you presenting now and what deficiencies do you have now? So if it doesn't show up, it doesn't mean that you don't have it heavy metal wise. So yep.
So to close then, when we talk about nutrition being personality, what can I expect? Like what in 90 days of taking the minerals, what would you expect me to see go from and to?
Just, you're probably going to be skipping through a meadow with a wreath flower in your hair and just, a basket and, some fairies, I would say, trailing off, holding hands
here at this point.
yeah, exactly. Maybe not quite there, but you still be pretty grounded. No, you'll have more energy, more joy, you'll sleep better, you'll have smoother interactions. So for that, actually, I would recommend silica too, because silica is going to help push out aluminum, mercury, so as well, which everyone has a mercury toxicity to some extent, and aluminum. Yeah, so silica is a smoothness, I think that will also help. So it's just something else to think about.
I've noticed my hair actually being a bit thinner.
This will help hair, skin, and nails.
The silica.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll actually have a product there soon too. It's coming, but not quite here yet. Yep.
Cool. Yep. It's exciting. And I think we will put a link to the hair mineral testing, to the minerals. You have an amazing course that I took myself to help me understand this, apart from all the support. And we have discount codes that we will put below this podcast for people who want to I think everyone should test. Having done it myself, I genuinely think it's been so insightful. I mean, just the connections we've made together here on this is just phenomenal. I'm really grateful to you, Barton, for coming back and sharing all of this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, my pleasure. And I hope this helps a lot of people. And yeah, the course is great for, people that are just into what you and I are into, and also people that are helping other people in some way. So it could be, I've had couple of the top doctors in the world that they've become friends and gone through that course. I mean, this has been the area, after studying chemical engineering, I was very confident that I could be one of the top people in the world in this area on this test and understanding the different nuances. And I really make it simple. The course is only a couple hours, and it really, through those modules, really helps people understand how they can bring it into their practice and offer more optionality and support for people. And yeah, it's really beautiful. And it may be something that if you're listening and you're like, I'm a biohacker, you may also really like it. And it comes with a test and consultation too. So it's a really good price, and it's really meant just, to help people understand and take real control of their health, put it back in their hands. Because the more you feel chained to someone else and they're ordering every lab, in this case, you can just order the hair test on our website at Upgraded Formulas, and you do that. You schedule your own consultation on your time with one of our nutritionists, and then if you're someone that is a practitioner or is really savvy and wants to learn over time, yeah, you can be doing it yourself, which is, I think, fascinating. If you need a second opinion, that's where our consultations are for. So yeah, all of that's on the site, and I hope that you got a ton of value out of this, because this has been great work in my life so far, and it is very, very important. And I would say, just to be overlooked at your own peril, frankly. And also, on a good note, it's for every other sort of optimization technique that you're doing in your health, every other biohack. If your foundation is strong, if your minerals are in balance, everything else works better, or you don't need it. One or both. So
yeah.
Yep.
I couldn't agree more, and I can't wait to see. I'll be sharing with everyone the results that I get over the next few months. And
Yeah.
I'm super grateful for you for coming on and sharing all this. And
Thank
as Barton says, if it's impacting you today, please share this episode with a friend who it may help, because I think this information is so important, and we definitely need to get this out to a wider audience.
Absolutely. Yeah. So such a pleasure. So yeah, full transparency, there's plenty of other things that I do, but this is the foundational thing that gives me the most confidence in my health, and the clear path forward, and knowing what I need to work on and be aware of, and what foods I need to eat more of, and what supplements I need to supplement on a daily basis, and what I'm too high in, like we talked about. So all of that's very important.
Amazing. Thank you, Barton.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
So in terms of magnesium, it's really interesting, because obviously people, as you say, think about the different types of magnesium they should be taking, and usually that's when they're attached to an amino acid. You're saying the type isn't important, the availability is really key. But I was also curious around the time of day that people should be taking magnesium.
Right. So definitely in the evening before bed, within 2 hours of bed, or right before bed, either way. But certainly before bed is the main thing. I do that every single night. And just to clarify, that's for our product, where the form doesn't matter. Just because of the technology we have to be able to produce a plasma-like substance that's absorbed without digestion. So once your body breaks down the capsule, if you're doing our capsule product, it goes straight into the red blood cells, which distribute that throughout the body. Now, if you're doing the liquid, which frankly does not taste good, but you can put it with Upgraded Charge, our electrolyte product that has a lime flavor, lemon lime, and comes from actual lime peel. So we can do that where you flavor it, or choose some other way to flavor it, but it has no aftertaste. That's the good news. And I travel with that, particularly on planes, the liquid, or I'll pull the capsule apart over a glass of water and I'll down that if I ever have a cramp on a flight, for example, from to London from the US. The longer the flight, the more chance you'll have cramps and dehydration. Just little foot cramps that kind of wake you up, when you're trying to sleep on that long flight. So yeah, those are some thoughts there. And dose wise, I'm about 195 pounds, and I'm very active, and I work, a lot. Push myself pretty hard. I do something like 5 capsules a night. The dose, really minimum dose for an adult would be 2 capsules. And if someone's running a marathons or training, it's just going to go up with your activity. So your activity levels here, your dose is going to go up. And then I take a capsule in the morning to calm my cortisol levels, or I'll do some of the dropper, whichever, because the taste doesn't bother me. I just shoot it like a shot. It has no aftertaste. And I take that with my vitamin D, because like we talked about with vitamin D, you want magnesium to keep the vitamin D from causing the calcium to overabsorb and potentially cause cell death in the brain. So I do that. I do our upgraded boron. I do some B6. We have a product coming out right now that has B6 in it, so I just use that. And then, that's kind of like the magic formula that I've seen work really, really well for me and so many others.
Is there a way of calculating it according to body weight then? You mentioned
Yeah, well, body weight's one thing, but like, you'll use as much or more than I am if you're running, 10 miles a day, right? So even though, even though I'm a larger person, so that, but I would say if you're, for example, 140 pounds or more, you're going to want 3 or more capsules a night for sure. Pretty safe bet. And then, you just test your levels. You can get started on that. 80% of people have a deficiency of magnesium, and it's something that you have to take daily because it's water soluble. It doesn't stay in the body, and every cell uses it to make energy. So those are some important thoughts. And we do ship to all around the world, and we typically get through customs just fine because we're able to mark things well. So it's just peace of mind for people. So
what about when people are seeing their blood show higher magnesium levels?
That's pretty rare. It's pretty rare. When you see it in hair, certainly the thing is that you're most likely in blood too, you're most likely in need of B6. So you've absorbed it and you're having a poor chance of utilizing it. So because you need that cofactor, which is part of the methylation factor. When you look at B6, it's the most used methylation factor or cofactor. So
that came up on my blood work. I know that it was high, and also I have like not great SNPs in terms of methylation.
Totally. I understand that and why that can be, and a lot of people are there. I think your body's also trying to preserve as much magnesium as it can, just with your calcium level. Our bodies are really smart in the recycling of certain nutrients, and I mean it's just wild. So
Cool.
Yep.